1949, when the people of India gave to themselves a sovereign nation, a new democracy was born. The long debates of Constituent Assembly gave a roadmap for India's tryst with destiny. The Imperial Council Hall was henceforth the Parliament of India, whose doors opened with the Sanskrit inscription Lokam Dwaram Patranum Pashayem Tvam Vayamvera, meaning, open the door to thy people and let us see thee for the obtaining of the sovereignty. This sovereignty was the will of the people of India to be expressed through its representatives in the Parliament. And to see this noble expression take shape amidst the complexities of real-life politics, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan was entrusted with the responsibility of conducting the upper house, the Rajya Sabha. He was the first chairman of Rajya Sabha, the first vice president of India.
To deserve in some modest measure the great faith of my people and devote the few years left to me to their service.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You are watching this special program on the birth anniversary of the first chairman of Rajya Sabha, Dr. Radhakrishnan. Dr. Radhakrishnan has a unique place in the history of independent India. He was always known as an erudite philosopher, a prolific scholar, and an accomplished diplomat. But when he was elected as the first Vice President of India and the Chairman of Rajya Sabha, a lot more was expected of him.
India had just adopted its new constitution. It had just elected the members of its new parliament. These members had the challenging task of realizing the values enshrined in the constitution, of raising the foundations of a new India as per its constitution.
Dr. Radhakrishnan was to be the custodian of the house where the MPs set out to achieve this historic task. And he succeeded. He succeeded in shaping up Rajya Sabha as a place where all parties were heard, all views were deliberated, and the spirit of Constitution of India was upheld in letter and in spirit. His 10 years as the first chairman of Rajya Sabha left a legacy that none could ever tamper with.
India had just adopted its new constitution. It had just elected the members of its new parliament. These members had the challenging task of realizing the values enshrined in the constitution, of raising the foundations of a new India as per its constitution. Radhakrishnan was born in 1888 in Tirutani, a temple town of Madras Presidency, now in Tamil Nadu. He was brought up in an environment of Hindu rituals, Vedic knowledge and Oriental traditions. He also had an exposure to Christianity as he studied in missionary educational institutions. The multicultural and multi-religious exposure had a strong bearing on his life and philosophy.
Radhakrishnan ji, I would say that he was not an orthodox kind of Hindu or that way Pandit or sort of thing. No, he was interpreting Hinduism and probably to those orthodox Hindus, his explanation may not be acceptable because he interpreted Hinduism as a tolerant society, not in any way parochial. So it fitted into India's philosophy of pluralism.
Though Dr. Radhakrishnan wrote scores of books, he rarely wrote about himself. Therefore, very little is known about his childhood. All we know is that he grew up amidst the fertile combination of Indian traditions and Christian philosophy. This helped him to develop philosophical and religious sensibilities at an early stage of life. He could discover the philosophical links among various religions and thoughts and based his work on this understanding.
He explained Indian philosophy, I would say ancient Indian philosophy, to the West and to, as I said, to modern Indians, not just to the West, to our own generations, to our own contemporaries, his own contemporaries. After all, not everybody can read Sanskrit, not everybody can read Pali, not everybody can read Prakrit to go into the old texts and read them and learn from them straight away.
Radhakrishnan was a brilliant student. He was awarded scholarships throughout his academic career. In 1904, he joined Voorhees College in Vellore. But soon shifted to Madras Christian College. He graduated in European philosophy. Went on to write his postgraduate thesis on the ethics of Vedanta and its metaphysical presuppositions. The felicity with which he could master two different worlds of philosophy developed him into one of the greatest philosophers of all times.
Dr. Radhakrishnan's career began from Madras Presidency College in 1909. Here he spent 9 years before being made the Professor of Philosophy by the University of Madras. Meanwhile, in 1911, he wrote his critically acclaimed article, The Ethics of the Bhagavad Gita and Kant. This article became a milestone in his career that helped him break through to a substantial Western audience. The West was now recognizing his philosophical insights. He could speak a language that the West could understand. He could write words that the West would comprehend. In those times, he was criticized by some for a style of writing that suited the Western sensibilities. In these times, we'll call him a great communicator whose style transcended geographical and cultural boundaries.
Within years, he was awarded George V Chair of Mental and Moral Science based at Kolkata University and was followed by several lectures on international platforms. His Hebert lecture later took the shape of his famous book, An Idealist View of Life.
The West was now recognizing his philosophical insights. He could speak a language that the West could understand. He could write words that the West would comprehend. In those times, he was criticized by some for a style of writing that suited the Western sensibilities. In these times, we'll call him a great communicator whose style transcended geographical and cultural boundaries. Time for us to take a short break. We'll be back soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching this special program on Dr. Radhakrishnan. In his book, An Idealist View of Life, Dr. Radhakrishnan made a powerful case for intuitive thinking as opposed to purely intellectual forms of thought. Today, many lifestyle gurus lay emphasis on the power of intuitive mind. But Dr. Radhakrishnan was perhaps the first one to lay it down as a case in philosophy. He was well ahead of his times.
In 1929, Radhakrishnan moved to England. He was the principal at Harris Manchester College.
In the West also, his books were very popular and he was called to Oxford to lecture, and he became a professor over there for some time because he could put it across in an idiom and in a manner that was comprehensible today. He did not just overload it with philosophical terms and ancient Sanskrit terms, but he communicated the message, the essential message of Indian philosophy in a manner that the modern man could understand.
In 1931, he was knighted by George V, but he never used his title of Sir and preferred to use his academic title of Doctor with his name. The same year, Dr. Radhakrishnan returned to India. He became the Vice Chancellor at the newly founded Andhra University at Voltaire. It was now that he got the chance to realize his thoughts into policy and action. His career took a new form, that of an educationist.
He never romanticized the teaching profession. Like everybody says, it's a very noble profession. It is a noble profession. But he consistently said that your teachers need to be paid properly. They need to have a particular social status so that they can deliver. Because no profession can be just made to not get a return if you want good talent to be attracted towards it.
His reputation grew further. In 1939, he was made the Vice Chancellor of Banaras Hindu University and thereafter the Chairman of University Education Commission in 1948. He authored the Commission's report in 1949 and laid down the roadmap for the university education in newly independent Union of India.
You see how relevant they are even today. For example, he said he recommended the setting up of a Central University Grants Commission as a body which needed to maintain and coordinate standards throughout the country. He visualized it as a body of experts. At the same time, he felt that education has to be decentralized and therefore wide powers must be given to the state governments. So he tried to create a balance between the central government and the state government, and therefore he wanted education to be placed on the concurrent list.
As a teacher, Dr. Radhakrishnan was very popular. His students looked upon him as a philosopher and guide.
It is necessary that each one of us should think that the purpose of education is not merely physical fitness or mental alertness. It is the growth in spiritual sensitivity. Unless we develop that kind of spiritual sensitivity, we cannot be regarded as properly educated.
In 1921, when he left Mysore University for joining Kolkata University, his students came up with a rare gesture. They took him all the way from the university campus to the railway station in a flower-decked carriage pulled by the students themselves. They still remember him with nostalgia. Radhakrishnan believed that the right education could solve many ills of the society. He wanted to improve the quality of education and build up a strong relationship between the teacher and the student.
He symbolized what one of our Upanishads has said, that teaching is nothing but a dialogue between the teacher and the taught. The rest is all on the frills.
Children must be taught the history of the different nations where they will perceive their uniqueness. They must be taught, even when they are young, the elements of modern science and technology. They must be given glimpses into world literature so that their own minds are sharpened and feelings refined. It is my earnest desire that our children are treated as human beings and not as automata.
Radhakrishnan was globally acclaimed for his work of philosophy. He introduced the thinking of Western idealist philosophers in India.
What the philosopher does is more or less the same thing as the scientist does. One of the scientific metaphysicians of the West, Alexander, said he was propounding an empirical metaphysics. And he tells us the method of philosophy is exactly the method of science.
He mastered the classics of Hindu philosophy like Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra and commentaries on Sankara, Ramanuj and Madhav.
Our scriptures have said, Uttama Sahajavastha, Dvitiya Dhyana Dharana, Tritiya Pratima Puja, Homa Yatra Chaturthika. Sahaja Avastha. Live always soaked in the nature of God. Do not have one instant of your life separated from God. Whatever you happen to do, do in the consciousness of that Supreme.
I think the book he wrote on the Gita was more a philosophical book than, in any case, religious book. Here is a comparative of study of religions, traditions, cultures, civilizations. So he gives a large kind of interpretation, a varied kind of interpretation to the book Gita.
He was also equipped with Buddhist and Jain thoughts, as well as philosophies of Western thinkers such as Plato, Plotinus, Kant, Bradley and Bergson. He also credited with introducing Indian philosophy to global audience. His book, Indian Philosophy, was hailed as a philosophical classic and a literary masterpiece, both by readers and critics.
Dharma is to be performed by all of us. Anityani sharirani, vibhavo naiva shashvatah, mrityus sannihito nityam, tasmat kartavyam dharma sangraha. You have to perform dharma. That's the only obligation that you have in this world. Dharma is paropakara. Adharma is parapidana. That's the one simple definition we have had. What's the use of expanding it in series of books? If you understand hurting another man is adharma, pleasing another man is dharma, you are performing dharma.
1947, India became independent. The then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru looked for people who would steer the country through the difficult times and shape its destiny as a proud nation. Dr. Radhakrishnan was among the few who were called upon to serve the country in new capacities as member of Executive Board of UNESCO and member of Constituent Assembly. His fabled speech on Indian tricolour in Constituent Assembly reverberates even today.
Tricolour was a very important issue as to what does it represent, the three colours in the national flag, which has been debated earlier also. But in the Constituent Assembly, when the final decision was to be taken, there Radhakrishnan's intervention and the speech that he gave was one of the most brilliant speeches that anybody delivered in the Constituent Assembly.
Nehru appointed Dr. Radhakrishnan as the ambassador to Soviet Union. And when he returned to India, Stalin commented, "You are the first person to treat me as a human being and not as a monster. You are leaving us and I am sad. I want you to live long." He was highly impressed with Radhakrishnan's outlook and worldview. Radhakrishnan and Nehru did not think alike, yet they were bound by some common beliefs. They both had unwavering faith in the destiny of man and democracy, and their concern for common man and reality united them.
There is something great. We say Satyameva Jayate. Our motto is truth alone prevails. Truth is the name which we give to God. He is Satya Swarupa. He is Satya Narayana. We say truth prevails.
At the time when Nehru was laying the foundation stones of Indian democracy, Radhakrishnan emerged at its most credible voice that reverberated from China to Peru.
I know that his relations with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru were very intimate because Prime Minister Nehru was the one who picked him up and sent him as envoy to the Soviet Union, and because he was new to this diplomacy field.
While Nehru presented India's statesmanship, Gandhi its people, Radhakrishnan presented the intellectual spiritual aura, and therefore their relationship was not that of antagonistic or intellectual competition, rivalry, anything. They all complemented each other.
His philosophy built bridges between Indian spiritualism and Western democracy. He brought legitimacy to democracy among millions of Indians who otherwise would have found it difficult to digest the individualistic system.
The unity of the world cannot rest merely on political arrangements or economic alliances or social factors. They can rest only if you are able to produce a sense of psychological coherence, a sense of world community among the people themselves. Literature has a great part to play in engendering this consciousness that we all belong to one human family.
In 1952, Dr. Radhakrishnan became the first Vice President of India and therefore the first Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Dr. Radhakrishnan served as Vice President of India for 2 terms. And in 1962 was elected as its second president.
A nation without a vision, it is said, perishes. The nation to which we belong has the vision of democracy. And when we call democracy, what we mean by it is providing every individual with adequate opportunities for the development of his soul or spirit, for the development of his personality.
He is what I would call, if it were Plato, you would say philosopher king. I would say philosopher vice president, philosopher president.
During his presidential tenure, India witnessed strained relations with China and Pakistan. Marked with 2 full-scale wars in 1962 and 1965. India also witnessed the sad demise of 2 prime ministers, Jawaharlal Nehru and Lal Bahadur Shastri. But despite 2 wars and the loss of towering personalities like Nehru and Shastri, Dr. Radhakrishnan, as president, ensured smooth transition of governments. He ensured that India would move ahead resolutely on the path of democracy. He had a task before him. He had to wade in uncharted waters. It was a new country, with a new parliament, with a new constitution, and a house comprising of members who were, for the first time, parliamentarians of a free and sovereign nation. MPs not only represented New India, but also their states, their languages, their cultures, and most of all, their parties and ideologies. If there was a unifying idea of a new nation, there were also fault lines of caste, creed, region, religion, language, and ideology. And it was the job of Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan to steer them all towards a common national goal in Rajya Sabha, while ensuring their individual voices in a federal structure.
He was a teacher. He'd spent his whole life as a professor, a vice chancellor of various universities, and then he was a diplomat. He was sent by Nehru to very tough assignments in Russia, for example. And after that, he was the vice president and then the president. So it is a very fascinating case of a teacher, a professor who rose to the highest office in the land.
He ensured that India would move ahead resolutely on the path of democracy.
That is all for now. Thank you for watching this special program on Dr. Radhakrishnan. But keep watching Rajya Sabha television.